Hi, everyone. This is the 4th episode of Stolen Homes, and I'm with Baba. Hi, Baba.
Hi, Olympia.
Hi. We are sitting in his office currently, and we're going to get started really soon. I just want to recap the last few episodes because I know it's a lot of information just to help everyone understand where we are. So the first episode, we talked about background and how you grew up. The second episode, we talked about the first 3 days of the first part of the invasion. In the town of Marathovenos, which sits on the more northern part of Cyprus, correct? Okay. And we talked about the details of that, and then there was a break of 3 weeks where there was nothing. There was like a truce of peace, and Greece was talking to Turkey, and we're trying to figure out what we could do. And then we hit the 14th of August, and that is the second wave of the invasion where Baba left his home, not knowing if it was going to be a permanent leaving. They weren't sure if they were going to have to, resettle somewhere. I don't think that really crossed you guys' minds that when we leave, this is it. That's not what you were necessarily thinking.
Well, we were hoping that it wasn't permanent. We had a fear that it was, but we didn't want to believe that this was happening. So we were hoping against hope.
Yeah.
And
that you were going to come back.
Yeah.
So the third episode focuses on leaving and going to Ayia Napa. So if you look at a map of Cyprus, half of the island, which is the upper part of the island, the top part of the island, was the part that was invaded and taken and still to this day is occupied by the Turks. Just to make it a little easier to understand, that is the part where Baba lived. He lived in one of the towns in the northern part of Cyprus. So when they left, they fled down.
South.
Yeah, down south.
We went south, yeah.
Yeah. And towards closer to the coast, right?
Yes.
That's where Ayia Napa is, just to make that clear.
The southeast coast. So we went east and south. And we went all the way to the coast to the end.
Yeah. And that's where Ayia Napa is.
Yeah. It was a small town at the time. Still a small town.
It
was a tiny village in those days.
It was a little fisherman's town.
A fishing village.
Town. So where we left off last episode is that you guys, fled. You ended up at a school for a night or two. Was that one night?
Yeah.
And then you got back in the truck, and you all drove down to Ayia Napa all together. And you went to Nisi Beach Hotel, which wasn't actually really a hotel at that time. It was just concrete, like bone of hotel. And you stayed there, and there were like 60 other people.
Yes.
And you slept on concrete floor.
On cardboard boxes.
On cardboard boxes, trading between people around you so that you could be nice and share. And then was it the owner of Nisi Beach was feeding you guys, or one of the relatives?
One of the relatives, yeah.
Yeah, was feeding you guys eventually, and kind of understood this is going to be a little bit more of a long-term situation with all these people that are now refugees in their own country. So let's start there in the transition from being at Nisi Beach, kind of how you guys ended up going and the details of that.
Well, the first few days were quite difficult because there was no food. We were in one change of clothes.
Yeah.
There was no place to take a shower. There was no comfort. We slept on concrete, so
no privacy.
No privacy. It was a very difficult time. And then, in addition to that, there were people among us, the 60 or 70 people that were there, who were distraught, very distraught, and they were crying every day and wanted to return to their homes and things like that. But we were still scared that the Turks might move further south, and we didn't know where to go. We were at the edge of Cyprus,
right,
at the edge of the island, and so there were several things. I remember that were very difficult, and one of them was this: that people were distraught, and the women especially, and they left their animals, and they left their homes, and they left their belongings, and they were kind of talking about it. But the story, and this is the first week, the first 3 or 4 days, this was very intense.
Yeah.
And I remember one woman dressed in black who would give courage to these women. She was dressed in black from top to bottom, and she was giving courage to these women, and I was very surprised and very kind of impressed with her courage, with her strength, and I kept saying to myself, where is she getting all this strength?
Yeah.
So we ended up there on Wednesday, I believe, or on Thursday, and then on Saturday evening, some of us decided to go up to the village of Ayia Napa and go to the church for Vesper service, Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, late afternoon. And the Vesper service is the preparation for Sunday. So it's one of those services which you attend as you enter into the Sunday liturgical cycle.
Yeah, so it happens the night before.
The worship cycle, yeah. So we went. I went with my brother, actually. I went with Stelios, I think. The others didn't go, or if they did, I don't remember it. And there I saw, in the middle of the service, as the service was developing, I saw this woman who was in black, who was giving strength to the others. She was there. She was in deep prayer. She would do prostrations in front of God.
This is the same lady?
The same lady who was... And I was really impressed by that too. In the meantime, I had learned, and this is the interesting thing, is that as I saw her give courage to the others, I asked about who she was and where she came from and her story, and I learned that she had just lost her son. She had just lost her second son, and then, as people talked about it, they said that she had actually lost her first son, the oldest son, in the skirmishes with the Turks a few years before. And I also learned that she had lost her husband during the uprising against the British in the 50s, in the late 50s. So that really impressed me. So how is this woman finding all this strength?
The recent son, though, the last son, that was from this... current, like it just happened.
Yes. Her son was killed in the war, in the invasion.
Yeah.
The previous son was killed in the fighting between the Greek Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots a few years before.
Yeah.
And her husband died in the 50s, late 50s, when the Cypriots had risen against the British. The British occupation of Cyprus, because Cyprus was under the British Empire, and it was and they wanted their freedom, and they fought against the British during that time, and her husband died during that time, killed by the British.
So she lost everyone. I mean, she didn't really have any of her boys.
She had one son.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, she had one son, the youngest one, and she was with her.
He was with her, yeah.
Yeah, she was with him.
Yeah.
He was with her, and so. So I go to the church on Saturday afternoon, like 3 days after the second part of the invasion, after we left our homes. And there she is in church, and she is in deep prayer, and she is doing these prostrations in front of God. And I realized that the only way to get strength is to do what she was doing. Prayer would be the way to receive strength through this. And that was a big lesson for me.
Yeah.
Okay, that remained with me until today.
Yeah.
I will never forget that woman. I will never forget her face. And she was amazing, and she had so much strength. And she was drawing all of that from her faith in God. Because she not only lost everything that she had, like everybody else, but she also lost three men, three men in her life, her husband, 2 sons. And she was giving strength to the other women who were lamenting the loss of their homes and their animals and their properties and their belongings.
Did you ever speak to her?
Yes, I did, several times. But after that, they left with her son. Like a few days later, they left with her son. I don't know where they went. Or it was after I left for school, and I never saw her again.
Right.
So I never saw them after that. But those days that I was there, they were there as well.
Yeah.
So this is one of those events that stayed in my mind. And of course, the days were very difficult as they went on. And my parents were not in good shape, from the health perspective, and I found the relative of the owners who was basically running the bungalows of the hotel, because the hotel itself was not finished.
Right.
But there were some rooms that were built already, and they also were running the restaurant.
Right.
And I went to him and I said, "Look, my parents are not doing well, so would you please see if you can find a room for them in the bungalow so that they can take a room, so that they can have a bed to sleep on."
Yeah.
And my sister is only 11, so would you please do something about that? And Stelios, my brother, and I would go into the restaurant and we sleep on the floors that were carpeted. So we found a way to survive that. But the days were going by, and a week went by, and a second week went by. And finally, that guy felt for my parents, and he saw them how
struggling.
Much,
he saw
they were struggling, sleeping on cardboard boxes, and also my sister. And so he went and he opened one of the bungalows and told them, "You can sleep in here.
This is where you're going to be." Yeah.
And
but it took a while to get there.
The great thing is that they stayed in that bungalow for a long time, and then later, when those as tourists came back a year later or a year and a half later,
oh my gosh,
they gave them another one and they moved to the other one. So they stayed in that place for the next year and a half. So on the beach.
Was there not? Well, that's nice. But
that was wonderful.
Yeah, on the beach is great, especially Cypriot beaches. But was there not conversation during that time of like information from the government or information on the radio from that one guy you were talking about, or any information that was saying like, oh, the Turks have stopped, they're not going to come to the southern part now, but no one's allowed here anymore? Like, was there any explanation of that at all while you were there in Nisi Beach?
Well, yes, of course, there were all kinds of things going on. In fact, the first few days, there was talk about fighting back and gaining our land and whatever. Yeah. And I was ready to go and fight. And my father says, "You foolish man, foolish boy. Sit still, you cannot go against the Turkish army."
Aww, yeah.
There is no hope for this. Just sit still. So I kind of
backed off
and sat back and didn't do anything. But we were excited. We were, we wanted to fight. We wanted to fight back. We wanted to, we're very idealistic, but the reality of the older people who knew better kind of grounded us.
Yeah.
And we sat back. That was the one thing.
Okay.
The other thing is that the fighting ended within the next 3 or 4 days. There was no fighting anymore. The Turks kind of stopped somewhere. They took whatever they took, and they established the boundaries.
So they're the ones who established those boundaries that we call the green. Yeah. When we refer to it, we say the green line.
Wherever our army resisted, they kind of they didn't take as much. Wherever the army moved away, they took more. Eventually they kind of found their balance and they stopped.
Which is half of the island.
It's about 40% of the island.
Yeah.
37% people say, 37% of the
technically.
Land. Technically,
yeah.
But but there were 200,000 refugees from the northern part that had no place to go. That we learned that they were putting out tents, and immediately there were shipments of tents coming from outside.
Oh wow!
From foreign countries, from other countries.
Really? So other countries knew that 200,000 of you were displaced.
Of course. Everything was in the news in the United States, in England, in Europe. Everybody knew. They didn't do anything about it in the sense of stopping the Turks. They just granted the Turks that part of the island. The British and the Americans and and the Europeans just said, "Okay, Turkey, you can have whatever you want," basically, and that's where Turkey stopped. The British only pointed out to them they could not cross the boundaries of the bases, the British bases that they were claiming that they had from 1960. But
oh wow!
Yeah, so they did not intrude into the bases. But
so that's why they didn't really move down.
In some places they couldn't because the bases were in the way. So
I see.
But they could have moved where we were, and they didn't. So they decided not to bother with us.
For whatever reason. Yeah, for whatever reason.
But Yeah. So anyway, so the other thing that happened, I think I spoke about it the last time, is that my brother, who was in the military, he was in the army, and he was on the front line at some point.
The older brother, yeah.
My older brother, he we didn't know where he was, but there was a service on the radio, the Cyprus radio, and we called in, and we told them to announce that we were here at this particular place, and within the next 2 weeks, my brother got the message, and he was given permission, and he came and saw us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like 2 weeks later.
Really?
Yeah, it was like, yeah.
While you were at Nisi Beach, in Ayia Napa.
So that was good because we were afraid for him, for his life. We didn't know where he was. We didn't know if he was captured. We didn't know if he was killed on the front line. We had no idea. So, but he came and saw us, and that was excellent. He was an officer in the military. He was he had a rank. So,
thank God he wasn't killed.
So he was able to use the military vehicles to actually come and see us. So he came with other soldiers. He gave us his presents. He told us that he was okay.
Good.
And he left within an hour. So
and
it was
he went back.
Yeah, he went back.
Was there still fighting at that point? Or?
No, there was no fighting.
But he went back because...
He went back to wherever his unit was now stationed. He had moved from where it was.
Okay.
He was somewhere else. And so he
How
went
old
back
was he during that time?
He had to be about 20... No, I was 17, so he was 2 years older than me, a year and a half. So he was 19 and a half years old.
He's like a baby to me. Like
he was less than 20.
He
had not been 20 yet. He was not 20 yet.
Wow.
Anyway, so that was solved as well, and that was good for us because we were worried about him. And, and people lost sons and daughters, and people lost relatives. So we were concerned, okay? So that was good.
That was good.
My parents were more at peace because they saw him and they saw that he was well.
Yeah, probably felt so much better.
Yes, of course. So now for me, the issue was I had to go to school. And my school was in Lefkosia.
How could you be thinking about school during this time?
Well, I mean, it was time for school.
Wow.
Okay, it was September.
Yeah, I guess that's when school starts there. Yeah.
It was like the week before school starts, and the schools were going to start on time.
But they were going to start anyway, even though half of the island, I mean, I say half, and it's an exaggeration, but half of the island is...
Well, we're gearing up to start. Of course,
wild.
the 200,000 people who were in, they're in the fields, they're in tents, they're in, there are no schools for them. They're in a special situation.
Right.
Because then the government had to provide at some point for schooling for them, for the children. For me, my school was still there. It was in Lefkosia. It was not touched by anything. The war didn't affect it.
How far is Lefkosia from Marathovnos, where you were, and then Ayia Napa?
Yeah. From Marathovnos, it was 15 miles away.
Down?
So it was west of Marathovnos.
Okay.
So I would get on the bus every day and go to school.
Gotcha.
And then get back
on the bus
and go back home.
Okay.
It was a little tough because the connections of the buses were not as easy, so sometimes I had to stay longer, and then I would do homework in Lefkosia, or I would stay at school, or I would stay on the bus and do homework, things like that. But I went back and forth every day. Now we're so far away because we're at
Ayia Napa,
we're at the edge of the southern edge of Cyprus, and Lefkosia is at the center of the island. Roads are very bad at the time. There were no good roads. Today everybody goes to Cyprus and sees highways and thinks that this was, but in those days there were little roads that only one car could drive on them basically. It was very hard to, whenever you encountered another car, you had to kind of fall to the side and let it go by. So it was different. It was totally different. There were some highways too, but they were very central and very...
not the way they are now,
not
obviously.
the way they are now. So anyway, so... in this, I knew that I had to go back to school.
Wow.
So one of my uncles, after the invasion, during those 3 weeks, he ended up in Lefkosia because he had a son. He had a daughter married to a policeman, and the policeman worked at the police headquarters in Lefkosia. So because he was working at the police headquarters. They moved to Lefkosia. They found a place in Lefkosia. They were staying there. Okay. Temporary place, but they were staying there. So somehow we communicated with them, and I don't remember how. We found them. And one day I kind of got on the road, took a few clothes, got on the road, and hitchhiked my way to Lefkosia to go find them.
Wow.
I went there and I said to them, look, I need a place to stay temporarily until I start school so they can go to school.
This was within those first 2 weeks in Ayia
Napa? This was after the third week.
Okay, after the third week.
It was after the third week when the school was starting. So like a day before the school started, I went there.
And found them.
I found them. Mm-hmm. So I would get a ride to the school from where they were, and then I would get a ride back. But this was very difficult for everybody, and I was too far away from the school, so it was like a very, very impossible task. Okay, so in this process, very interestingly, while we're in Ayia Napa, and we went, they opened up a refugee
camp.
Not a camp, but a place to get food and get clothing.
Okay.
This was like 3 days rather before I left for school.
Okay.
So at that place, I encountered this British Anglican priest who was in charge of what was a center of the Middle East Council of Churches that was centered in Ayia Napa in the monastery.
Interesting.
And I told him I was a student at the English school. And he says,
in
Lefkosia. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea. He says, let me see if I can help you.
Well, that was nice of him.
He went to Lefkosia, actually, and he met with the principal of the school.
Oh, wow.
And he arranged for a scholarship for me to stay in the dormitory of the English school.
Wow.
From the Middle East Council of Churches.
Oh, my God. What a cool story.
So it was
That's a miracle.
A gift from heaven. I stayed 2 days with my uncle, and the third day I was in the dormitory.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
And all completely covered by the Middle East Council of Churches. So
That's so nice.
I kind of felt for that. I didn't know what the Middle East Council of Churches was until much later.
Yeah.
But I felt kind of obligated to them. So later, when I returned to Cyprus, Years later, I went back and I offered my time and I offered my help and I went to their conferences and I offered, I gave lectures and I gave presentations and things like that to pay them back for all the help they gave me during those years.
Yeah.
But this was like a miracle in the sense that right at the moment when I needed to go to be in school and be on the campus because nobody could bring me back and forth anywhere. It was and I had no money to rent.
Right, with what money you guys were staying in ECB. Nobody had any money,
There's
really.
no money whatsoever.
Yeah.
I remember being at the dormitory and having 25 cents in my pocket for a long time. I couldn't even buy like a drink at the cafeteria, and I could not buy a sandwich at the cafeteria. So I was totally dependent on the dormitory for
whatever they had.
At least the first year.
Wow.
The entire first year. And I was in the dormitory for 2 years, and it was all paid by the
That's a miracle.
Middle East Council of Churches.
Amazing.
And it was very great blessing for me, and kind of I thank God for those people that made it possible.
Did you have any time while you were in the English school in Lefkosia to like mourn what had just happened?
Oh my God. The first year was everyday morning for me.
Yeah.
In the afternoons, I couldn't focus, I couldn't concentrate.
Okay. Well,
I would go to class
wondering.
in the morning. In the afternoons, instead of being in my room and studying, I would be wandering the grounds of the school. And he was like he had a nice like small park. It was like a small park. It was dry, but it was like the entire thing was like a small park. So I would walk around and just think about what happened and running through my mind and run everything through my mind. The things that happened before the invasion, the things that happened after the invasion, the time on the front line and the time with the Turks, shooting at us and all of that. It was like running every day.
Yeah.
And I was basically depressed. I looked at it later. I didn't know at the time. I could not understand
what that feeling was. Yeah.
But later, when I thought about that first year, especially, And the second year was much better, but the first year I was totally depressed.
Did anybody talk to you?
Nobody talked to us.
No teacher, like nothing. There was no concern.
I mean, there were a lot of other
refugee
kids that came back to the school too, and they were
the same school.
But there was no concept like today. For example, you'd be seeing a psychologist for counseling.
Well, the teachers even are told in schools usually if they know that a child's been through some type of trauma to communicate with you. But that didn't even nothing happened. It's like they pretended like nothing. It was
as if nothing ever happened.
As if 40% of the island wasn't just totally taken over by another country.
I mean, it was continually on the news. Everybody was talking about the politics of it, and it was going to happen, and negotiations.
But wouldn't talk to you guys in person, like it was a dirty conversation.
The 2 years in the school, I never had a conversation with anyone that would say, "How are you feeling?
Really?
What has really happened to you? What's going on with your family?" Not a single person asked me the question.
What about the other refugee kids? Did you guys talk about? So everybody just literally just was not speaking about what was happening, like to you in person. It's different that it was politically involved in the news and things like that, but like no person went up to you and was like, "Isn't that crazy that happened? Like, how do you feel?"
We might have talked to each other. I don't remember, but we definitely talked to each other, especially the ones that we knew each other. And we're all refugees now, and we kind of
so you had some type of
we kind of talk to each other. Where are your parents? How are they doing? How's your sister? How's your brother? I mean, what's going on with you guys? Did you find a place to stay? Or things like that, but nothing more than that. I mean, it was like, okay, we're all refugees. I mean,
here we are.
What do you do? The sad part was that we discovered once we returned that some of the kids that we knew were killed in the exchange of fire. There was one particular guy. We found out that he was taken by the Turks. He was basically taken with a group of people from his own town, his own village, when the troops came in. And because he was an older kid and he was tall and he looked like an adult. Oh,
you talked about him in the last episode. Yeah. They just assumed he was one of the soldiers or something that was older.
And we never found him. We think that he was killed.
They probably killed him.
Yeah, he was executed along with others. When they were executed among the 3,000.
However many that they took,
But his fate was unknown for a long time. He was in the 2,000 missing for a long time. And I don't even know if they have found his bones, his remains.
Yeah.
To this day, I have no idea.
They haven't found many remains
but because about 1,000 soldiers are missing.
Yeah, we still don't
people
know.
And soldiers, primarily young men that were either in the military or that were taken from their homes because they thought they were they were a threat to them. So
you're in school.
that particular one, we never saw him. We missed him. We felt bad for him. And we were thankful to God that we're alive. We were kind of.
I know what else. But you're in school.
And then you go back to school and you go back to your routine and.
Well, you're trying to learn a routine. It's not like you really have one.
Well, life goes on.
Yeah.
And
you adapted. Everyone was adapting.
I remember these years, the 2 years I was at the English school and I was staying at the dorm, especially the first year, I missed my family. I missed my parents.
Right, because you were away from them in the dormitory.
Yes, but they were also very far away. I mean, there was no way, there was no bus that would take me there. I had to change all kinds of transportation and then I had to hitchhike for the last part from Ayia Napa to Larnaca, for example, because there was no transportation.
Oh my God.
And these are very poor times and there is no connection, there is no public transportation in this way to connect the island.
How far is the school to Ayia Napa, Lefkosia to Ayia Napa?
Today with the modern highways it's about 50 miles away and it's like 1 hour.
Yeah, I can't even imagine what that would have been like back
in those days. You had to go through these villages with narrow roads and whatever, and
it would have taken you a few hours to get there.
So I couldn't go back every weekend, for example. There was no way for me to go back every weekend.
Oh my God!
The only time I would go back was for Christmas, because we had a break for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I could go back for Christmas, and then I would pack and take whatever I would take, and then go and be there for 3 weeks, and then come back. Now, in the meantime, I started meeting people. So I met a young man, he was younger than me, who was, his father was a policeman. He was a police chief in the area of Paralimni.
Where's Paralimni in reference to Lefkosia?
It's close to Ayia Napa, so it's like
it's
4 miles from Ayia Napa, so it's right on the coast as well. On the southeast coast of Cyprus.
Yeah.
So So his father was a policeman. He had a car. He was a police chief, actually, of the area. I think he became the police chief of the area at some point, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But his father had a car, and he would come and pick him up.
Okay.
So we met, and I was the only one from that area that needed a ride in that direction. So at some point, they would bring me home.
Oh, that's nice.
They would bring me home for the weekends, too.
That's
one
nice.
weekend here, one weekend there. And sometimes I would come and go and see my parents, and then I would go back Sunday night, and I would stay overnight in their home in Paralimni, and then in the morning we'll get in the car,
really
his
nice.
father's car, and he would drive us to Lefkosia, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever. And then he will return back and go to work.
That's really nice. Are you still friends with this person? Do you still know this person?
Yes. When I was in Cyprus, I saw them frequently.
Oh, that's great.
I visited them all the time. His father passed away. His mother finally passed away.
Yeah.
His sisters got married. He was the only boy in the family. He started in the United States and went back to Cyprus. And he's an engineer in Paralimni, and his wife is American.
Oh, that is so cool.
So we were friends, and your mother was friends with her.
Yeah, when we were there.
They had the American group of women.
Yes,
and
they
so
did.
she would come to those.
The American group of women.
Yeah,
little
she would
club
come to those,
in Cyprus. Yeah.
So
anyway, so he would
so
bring
that
you
was
back
a
and forth.
great relief in the sense of, for me, from being, on a weekend to be with like another 10 kids that had no place to go out of the 100 kids or whatever, 200 that were in the dormitory and have no place to go. It was very depressing. So the depression of the invasion, the depression of that I was going through, and then on top of that to be locked in on a weekend.
Alone.
Yeah. And not be able to see my parents, and not to be able to see my sister, and not to be able to see my siblings, my brothers. It was very difficult. And anyway, so those years at the English school, especially the first year,
tough.
Very tough for me. I remember when we went in, the school officials, the dormitory officials, they weighed us, okay, and when we finished the year, they weighed us again. I was lighter when I came out than I was when I went in, and I was pretty thin when I went in because we went through those weeks of
food.
through those weeks of
You were even thinner when
having
you went
nothing.
out.
I was thinner when I left the year because I was so depressed, and I know, having learned about some of these things later in my life, I realized what it was. But,
That's what it was.
But at that time, nobody diagnosed me, nobody understood. It was nothing. And anyway,
so during those 2 years that you were in the English school, when you say English school, what exactly do you mean when you say that? When you say the English school? Because I don't think people understand what you mean.
The English school is a private school in Lefkosia, which in order to get in, you have to pass exams. You have to. Nobody can register, just walk in and register.
Yeah.
At that time, more than 1,500 kids would apply to enter. For admissions for the first year, and only about 96 would be admitted.
Oh my God!
And this was one of the most difficult schools to get through, but it was a preparatory school for the universities of England.
I see.
It was established by the British in the early 1900s after they took over Cyprus from. They rented Cyprus from the Ottoman Empire.
Rented.
Yeah. And then somebody he wanted to give a chance to people to get the British education, especially the kids of the British diplomats and all these other people. He established the school.
Yeah.
And the school was basically funded by the British government until the 1960s.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, actually it was funded until the time when I entered in the 1970s.
Yeah, in the 70s.
1969. And then they withdrew their funding. And the government of Cyprus was giving some money to help it because it became very expensive. And my parents had to pay a lot of money for me to go to that school. But it was a very good school. It had both sciences as well as liberal arts. And I was good in math and physics and chemistry. I liked all of
was
that,
your
and biology. So I focused on the sciences. And so it gave me a great preparation for my entrance into engineering later when I came to the United States.
And they covered your cost the last 2 years, though. So
the last 2 years, everything was
Ayia
covered.
Napa didn't need to worry about paying those 2 years.
They didn't have any money anyway, but
it worked out
yeah,
where they
it
didn't
worked,
have
yeah.
to put money out that didn't exist. So during those 2 years, you're in school. Obviously, it's very difficult, and you're dealing with the fact that you just left your whole life essentially. Now you have to start over. So during that time when Ayia Napa were at Nisi Beach with Tia Barbara, they established themselves in 3 or 4 different places before finally settling somewhere while you were going to school or finishing those 2 years.
Well, actually, the first year I was in school, they were still at
Nisi Beach.
Nisi Beach. They were in the bungalow on the water.
Okay.
And when I finished school in June, and I went back to them, I was in the bungalow with them for the rest of the summer.
Okay.
Yeah. So that summer was very touristy.
The best summer.
It was the best summer of my life.
Because you were right on the water.
I was right on the water, beautiful sand, a beautiful island, a little island.
Yeah.
I learned how to swim, which I didn't know how to swim. I would swim back and forth to the island. I would swim around the island. Yeah. I got from somebody a mask and snorkel and fins, and I'll go around the island and go.
There was a little island in the water,
I would look at the fish.
Oh wow, that's so cool.
It was
was during the summer of the first and second year.
Yeah, in 1975.
Okay, 75.
After I finished my first year it was my 6th year at the English school.
That must have been really healing.
It was very good. It was very good for me. I remember with fondness that summer. It was the most beautiful summer of my life. Yeah. And I used to joke with my mother.
Oh God.
With Yaya, and I would tell her, "Do you remember when we were in Marathófonos and you kept buying land, and I kept telling you stop buying land because I'm going to sell it and move to the beach someday."
Oh my gosh.
He says we couldn't sell it. We gave it to the Turks, but we moved to the beach.
But we moved to the beach anyway. Aww.
So it was fun. It was really fun.
Aww, that's good.
So I would get up every morning and I would be in the water until
go explore and whatever.
I would come home and eat something,
go back.
Come home and eat something, go back. It was very good.
That's good. And then your last year.
But the interesting thing is that at the end of by August of that year, the people who owned the hotel, they decided to make some money.
Right.
So they
open it up.
Yeah. They started opening up some of the bungalows for people that would rent them. Yeah. And they opened up the restaurant too.
Okay.
And they started cooking for the guests. And there was internal tourism. Some of the more wealthy Cypriots who were not affected by the war, they wanted to go to the beach, and Nisi Beach was one of the best beaches in Cyprus.
It's still one of the best beaches.
So they got some of those people, and then they will need people to work. Ah. So what happened is that I went and I helped them. Okay, I didn't want any money, or I was hoping maybe they would give me a little something at some point, but I didn't ask for any money. Okay. Because we were living in there, and Stelios and I were helping, and my father was helping them. We kind of paying back that they were staying in their property.
Yeah, that they were helping.
Yeah. So I went and worked, and I helped the barman. There was a barman who was making drinks for the guests, for the Cypriot tourists mostly.
Yeah.
And there was some British too from the bases.
Yeah.
So, and it was a small crowd, never a big crowd, but in August, it got bigger and bigger, and they wanted me to work in the kitchen because the kitchen needed someone to help. So I said, okay, whatever you want, because I want to help. Yeah. So they put me behind the dishwashing machine. Okay. They had an automated dishwashing machine, but then I had to also wash all these big pans and all these big pots and all these other things. So it was like the 2 weeks before I left for school. Uh-huh. I was so tired. I was so exhausted. So summer of 75. So yeah, I was not happy with that. Right. At some point, I dropped everything and I said, I need to take a break.
I need to stop before I start school.
Jump in the water for a change.
And then you went your second year.
Yeah, and then I went into the school for the second year. I went back to the dormitory. Again, everything was covered for me.
Yeah,
I didn't
same
have to pay
scenario,
anything. Same
basically,
scenario.
as the first.
I felt better, a little better this year. It was my last year. The English school it was 7 years from 7th grade to 13th grade. So
13th grade.
It was,
interesting.
yeah.
Like almost like a year into college is what
Yes,
you would do.
it was. Yeah, the last 2 years were what in England they would consider the college years.
Yeah, to get you prepared for like university.
To enter. So by the end of the 7th year, I had applied to universities. I was accepted by 3 different universities in England, and all that kind of stuff. That the school had prepared us for that. They helped us make the applications.
That's good.
We passed the GCE exams. Before the invasion happened, I had passed my O levels, my ordinary level exams from the University of London. After the end of the 7th year, we took the A-level exams, advanced level exams, and I passed those 2. And I was accepted by 3 different universities.
So you were doing well, yeah.
But I had to go into the military for the next 2 years. So there was no going into the university yet.
So we're education's a huge thing in our family, so that happens later. But we're gonna talk about the military, being in the military in Cyprus is the next episode. We're going to talk about the details of that because it's a different situation in Cyprus. The requirement of going to the military and before you go to university, and there's just different things that we do. And even now, the situation is very strange there now with the military. I think it's good that you guys went for a couple years. That's a requirement. But the way that they're functioning now is a little different. So we'll talk about that too next week.
Yeah. But before we go to that, I want to say that my parents stayed at Nice Beach for another 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
Into the year 1976.
Okay.
Yeah. Into January 76. And then the owners asked them to leave because they needed to repair everything, and they were finishing the main hotel, and they were opening next summer. So they wanted all the refugees who were living there, who were mostly related to them, first of all, and they inherited us as well. So they asked everybody to leave and find a place elsewhere.
Okay.
And so my parents went to Ayia Napa and found an old house, very old house, that was not in such a good condition, and they moved into that. So when I came back from school in January, whenever it was, or for Christmas, they were in that old house.
Okay. When you were finishing your second year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So then if they went from the coast, like from the water.
From the water, they went
more inside, like inland.
More inland, up to the village. The village is up on the hill, so they went up to the village. They found
an
a
old house there.
That house has been turned into a taverna. It's called Napa Tavern today.
Yeah.
And we ate there.
We did eat there.
We ate there many times. So, and it was rebuilt. It was kind of they repaired
it was made into it was made into a touristic restaurant.
Yeah.
So we've been there many times. I didn't know that that's where. Well, we were eating there. I didn't know that used to be you guys' old home, though.
Yeah,
nobody told me until now. At 25, I realized we
right
went
at
there.
the place where we ate. It was the place we will eat at night.
Oh my gosh,
because,
that is wild.
Yeah.
You guys
Especially
brought us
summertime,
there, and we didn't know that. We had no idea.
So then after that, it was not very comfortable. It was too old. They moved into a newer home that the family owned. They were not there at the time. So they were able to move into a better place. So as I came back from school, I found them in a better home.
Okay.
And then and then what happened? And then from there, it was the way around. It was that house, and then they went into this older one because they had to move from the other one. And then after that, my father made friends with one of the people from Ayia Napa, Andreas, good man, good soul. God rest him, he's passed away. And he offered my father a place which was a small farmhouse, one room, had a little kitchen sort of that he can modify it. And and they moved into that.
Okay.
So by the time I was in the military, they were in that.
So that's like 4 homes. Wait, 4 or 5?
Well,
Nisi
Beach, the
old
one
house.
home, the other house,
Yep.
and now
and now that one that we're going to talk about more later.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was 4 moves at that point.
Yes. And of course, they really didn't have anything that they owned yet, so it was easy for them to move.
Right.
It was just
this is true. Yeah, just get up and go.
just clothes, just their clothes.
Whatever little things they had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and in the meantime, I finished school and I came back to Ayia Napa again.
Mm-hmm.
I spent the next month with them while I was preparing to go to the military.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a nice time too, because I kind of enjoyed it. I went to the beach again. And,
you had time with them, yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point...
I also worked a little bit during the time. I worked as a waiter in somebody's restaurant.
Restaurant somewhere.
So it was I made a little money so they can have some money. Not
so
much.
At that point, did it finally register like we're not ever going back home?
Oh, honey, we
had already registered from before.
Yeah.
Okay, I was curious.
That registered with me like before I even went back to school.
So you guys understood that we're like, we just have to figure out.
My father was a pragmatic one, and he kind of understood this. He had a lot of wisdom in that way, he kind of.
He was the best.
He kind of helped us to land.
Yeah. Put your feet in the ground and be like, this is where we're going to be, and we're going to start over together.
This is where we're going to be. You better get yourself ready to survive in this way, and you go back to school and you do what you need to do, and this is where we're going to be, and plan for the future, because we're not going back home again.
This is it. Yeah. This is it.
They're not going to give us our land. Yeah. Turks never gave land back once they took it, unless a big army came and forced them out.
Which I don't, that wasn't going to happen for Cyprus. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to end there. And we're finishing off that you're done with school and you're preparing now to go to the military. So next episode, we're going to talk about the details of the military and what that means and just the things that happen within the military next time.
Okay.
Okay.
Very
all right.
good.
I will talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.